morning. Gridiron 360, kicking it with you on this lovely Friday. Post a little Thursday night NFL football. We are here to discuss the Week 13 results in the NFL. We'll mix in maybe a little conversation about last night's Thursday night football game. It's Gridiron 360, Bill and Dave. Let's get it.
All right.
We're going to start today talking about the games last week we feel were the most intriguing, with the Thanksgiving games mixed in, as they always have them. Nowadays, there's 3 games. Always have Detroit, always have Dallas. And because we have Thursday night football, we get a little Thursday night. So we're going to start with the Minnesota Vikings.
Which was the last game of the week on Monday night.
That was the Monday night game, and they go in 8-3 in the hunt for potentially chasing down the Green Bay Packers in the NFC North, if not solid for a wild card spot. They need to hold that.
Yeah, they were one game out coming into this game at 8-3.
Yep, and they go out to the Pacific Northwest to take on the Seattle Seahawks, who are 9-2, currently leading the division, tied with the 49ers with the same record, but have that first game head-to-head win. All right, good game here.
Yeah,
real good game. Probably the best game of the weekend, I would say. And, you might have a little tryptophan that had left you sleepy from Thursday, even though there was some interesting stuff happening there, in particular with the Bills and the Cowboys. But outside of that, especially on the list of games we have here that we're going to touch on, this was the best game, I think, of all of them.
Yeah, and 49ers-Ravens was pretty good, too.
Oh, yeah, that was a good game, too.
Solid.
Oh, yeah. Where is that? Oh, there it is.
There we go. Oh, we're not going to miss. We're
good.
not going to miss.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about this game. It was for the first half, it was a pretty tight game. It was, you're back and forth, 7-7 in the first quarter, go into halftime, 17-10 Minnesota.
Yep.
And then the third quarter, I guess Minnesota didn't come out of the locker room. They score nothing in the third, and the Seahawks put 17 on them to jump up in the lead. Fourth quarter, they're playing catch-up. Minnesota is. They put 13 on the board to Seattle's 10. Final score, Seattle 37, Minnesota 30. Minnesota goes to 8-4. Seattle goes to 10-2. But like I said, it was, outside of that third quarter, is a pretty close game. Dalvin Cook, Seattle's defense has not been that great. It's not the defense that we're used to in Seattle. No. Certainly the Legion of Boom is gone. Dalvin Cook having a really great year this year. So for all intents and purposes, this was a game that he could have done his thing.
Yep.
Seattle held him in check. That D held him in check. 9 carries, 29 yards, did score. He did get banged up. What was that? When was that?
I think it was the end of the – no, it was earlier. I think it was the end of the second quarter, I think.
Was it? I can't remember.
It was either the end or the very beginning of the third quarter. Initial thing, he went to the locker room, was grabbing his arm. First, we started hearing shoulder. Then we heard chest. But the simple fact was he didn't come out to play. I believe it was in the second half, or he didn't come back, certainly if it was the beginning of the third quarter. And I think what was really interesting about this game, number one, they were holding him on running. Now, he did score a short rushing touchdown here, but he was not getting the average per clip. Was a little bit involved in the passing game. They held him to less than 60 all-purpose yards, which is huge for them. I mean, Dalvin Cook isn't always a 100-yard rusher, but he's had a lot of games where he's gone for 80 and then also, had 75, passing yards. So this guy is the focal point of the offense. And really, I think what's kind of interesting to me when I watched this game was it was the resurgence, or not this game, excuse me, but in the last probably 4 to 5 weeks with the Vikings was the resurgence of Kirk Cousins. and being able to kind of start trying to answer back some of those naysayers after, the performance last year and certainly the early part of this year. I mean, was it the first game where he threw like 12 times against the Falcons? It was ugly.
It was ugly.
Yeah, he wasn't doing well. Then he all of a sudden started producing, was hitting big plays. I think the thing I saw in this game, I mean, I'm going to kind of take Seattle and put them aside for a minute, but just watching Minnesota and their offense was now all of a sudden Kirk Cousins is the focal point of this offense, not benefiting from not having to be and being able to put up big yards. And if you remember Kirk Cousins back to Washington, I mean, Kirk Cousins could put up some stats. They couldn't win a lot of games, and he certainly, you can go back to his record against 500 teams prior to this year. I think he was like 5 of 29 against 500 or better teams career. So there was always kind of that.
Well, I mean, and they weren't great when he was in Washington.
No,
keep in mind, those stats also came with the fact that they were playing from behind a lot.
No, right. So, but the idea being is he wasn't winning tougher games, and he was in Washington for the most part. He was more of the focal point of that offense, and it was at best middling offense, but you'd put up stats. So that's kind of where that idea of let's bring this guy in and somebody give him a shot. Washington wouldn't commit to him. I think they at least 1 year they put him on the franchise.
Yep.
So now all of a sudden you get into that second half and it becomes his show. And the thing that's interesting, he was very efficient when he was throwing for all these yards. I start to see his efficiency dip in this game. And, he went 22 of 38. Again, Kirk Cousins throwing for that 35-plus times has never been a good recipe at any time in his career. So they kind of started having to obviously move that up. They didn't get much out of the rushing attack. Madison, I mean, they didn't really try to run it. They only ran the ball 14 times. So like that to me could spell a little bit of trouble for the Vikings as they move forward. Now, that being said, Dalvin Cook says he is going to play this week. We'll have to kind of wait and see how that plays out. But if he's not 100% and ready to go, that's going to be a challenge. Now, I will say this was probably one of Dalvin Cook's, if not his worst game that he's played as a pro. It definitely was close. I mean, he did fumble the ball 2 different times, and I think he fumbled the ball on the injury too. When he got injured, I think was a fumble. So, the turning over of the ball is not good against Seattle. And what's interesting, though, is if you look at the stat lines between the two quarterbacks, they're relatively close.
Yeah, Russ was a little more efficient, but didn't throw as many times.
Right. Now, the difference, too, though, is Chris Carson, who's kind of been a little bit of a bum for them lately.
He's been good. He's just not been. He's been fumbling. Like he's been getting his yards, but he's been fumbling.
Yeah, you can't fumble in the NFL consistently as a running back. I think last week he had 2 fumbles, or was it the week before?
No, last week.
It was last week. But this week he puts up a really good game. Goes 23 for 102 and a touchdown through the air. Had 1 catch for 7 yards. But again, I think it's going to be
on the ground, not through the
touchdown. Air. Right, he caught one pass.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing is going to be if Kirk Cousins is put in that position where he has to become the focal point of that offense. And remember, this is a team that's had problems not having Thielen for a while.
Well, yeah, and I was just going to say that. I mean, like his success the past several weeks, coming off of not starting the season off so great, has been all done sans Thielen.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's a big piece. That's a big piece.
But I think that also puts into perspective, though, the importance of Dalvin Cook, because Dalvin Cook's picked up a lot of yards for him through the air.
He has, but I got to be honest, and this is to Cousins' credit. Like, I mean, he's found ways to get around it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, in this game, number 82, tight end Kyle Rudolph goes 4 for 50 and a TD, right?
They've started to incorporate him in
last week. They were on
zone.
A bye, I think, right? I think Minnesota was on a bye a week ago. Yeah. And the week before that, Rudolph goes 5 for 67 and TD. Prior to that, goes 4 for 14, 2 TDs. Prior to that, goes 3 for 23, a TD. Prior to
Yep.
that goes 3 for 17, no TDs. Prior to that goes 5 for 58 and a TD. Prior to that game, didn't have any TDs.
Yep.
And that's pretty much where was that point, that game where he's went 5 for 58 and a TD, where Cousins started to pick it up.
Yeah, I mean,
This is a guy that he's a decent tight end, but he's kind of a sleeper. He's not your Kittles, your Ertz, your Kelseys.
yeah, he's probably he's equivalent. He's career wise, he's been like a poor man's Jason Witten.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But what they've done,
Great analogy.
yeah, what I think they've done, which has made sense, without Thielen, they've used Diggs as their big play guy. Okay, he's clearly their number one, but he's made some really big plays. And I think in that Thielen possession role, I think that's where they've inserted Kyle Rudolph, and they've certainly incorporated him. He hasn't scored a lot of long touchdowns.
No.
He scores
But
inside
they get
the
in the
15
red
yard
zone,
line.
he's
Yep,
looking
he's
for
the
him.
guy. So he's creating some level of mismatch. But then on top of that, they've also used really both of their backs, but Dalvin Cook's been the bigger star. But Madison has come in and caught balls in a lot of games too to help offset that. So they stretched the field with Diggs. They've tried a little bit with the resurgence, and he had one big long catch in Treadwell coming back, but they cut him before the season started. Until Thielen got hurt, they brought him back.
Yep.
So he was already kind of on his way out of town. They've just done a little bit more with each thing. Now, again, but that I still go back to the running game, and the pass catching out of the running game is critical for them along with Rudolph, because now if you go out and you don't have some of that pass catching ability, because you are going to have to start to figure out, how do I get those 3 layers of my passing attack back? Because Cousins needs that. I mean, they need that to keep defenses honest, because Cousins is not the kind of guy that's going to fire you down the field all on his own. He's just never been that guy.
No.
He's never been that guy.
Well, and let's talk about the other side of the ball in this.
Yep.
And you talked a little bit about Chris Carson, the I don't want to say resurgence, but the coming on of Rashad Penny in the backfield.
Yep.
This year, especially in the past 3 weeks, especially with Carson fumbling,
Yep.
I think you're seeing the role that him doing what they expected him to do when they drafted him, and his role becoming more prominent. I think the goal was to have him, if they were going to have a split. I'm not saying they both wouldn't get love, but I think when they drafted him, they expected him to be their guy.
Yep.
And it's starting to come on more, and that's going to be, I think, a necessity that both those guys do their thing. If one of them is off one day, the other one definitely needs to pick it up, or they both need to be on at the same time. Because I got to be honest with you. And Russ is still an MVP candidate, but the past few weeks, especially in his yardage numbers and because Tyler Lockett has been MIA for a few weeks, and he is their main receiver. Now, DK Metcalf has had a good year. This last week, he went 6 for 75, no TDs. But their passing game, and that's led by Russ, has not been what it was the first half plus of the season.
Well,
it's died down a little bit.
Yeah, but I think there's something to that. If we were to come into this season and I was to tell you, what's the MO that you would expect to see out of a Seattle offense?
Run the ball.
Right. So, but we've known over some of those stretches, Carson's been inconsistent. Penny has not come to form. And so you've got Russell Wilson having to take it on his shoulders. And why he's an MVP candidate is because he's proven that he can. Now, here's the thing with Russell Wilson is, I think Russell Wilson, in a way, is kind of like Tom Brady maybe over the last 5 or 6 years, in the sense that Tom Brady doesn't have to wow you with a 400-yard game. Tom Brady just has to be there at those clutch moments. That clutch gene, I think, is what makes him great. And I think that's what Russell Wilson has. You can run the ball all game, but if you're down by a score, you can put the ball in Russell Wilson's hand, and he can take the ball down the field.
I get it, but this isn't college. We know I'm a Clemson guy, and we're clicking on all cylinders at this time.
Yep.
This is the NFL, okay? You can't have – you got to try to be bringing it every week, not be like, okay, we're going to get there.
Yeah.
We're going to get there. Okay. So, I mean, like, and Russ is a seasoned vet and really good at what he does. So I understand that maybe the running game has picked itself up between both those backs the past couple of weeks, and it's brought down his level of needing to do as much. I still don't expect Tyler Lockett to do nothing for a couple weeks, and all these receivers to have, no one to have over 100 yards. And I expect more. Like, they don't have to blow people out, but it's been close the past couple weeks with the games they've had. Now, granted,
played a lot of games close.
They've been played tough teams the past couple weeks, but if they're gonna, my concern is going down this stretch, they can't make it close, because you're going to get into a fight. If you get into a fight with a team like New Orleans or something that can, and I know they played earlier in the year and New Orleans won the game.
Mm-hmm. That was Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, so they can't get into a fight where they're playing a team that can explode offensively very quickly, because they're not exploding offensively very quickly right now.
No, but first of all, some of these points scored at the end of the game were garbage time points. Look at what they were down by a touchdown, and then at the end of the third quarter, they were up by 10 points. So I guess my point is, if they can lean on the running game in this game, they could. Because I want to go back to the point you made about Rashad Penny and with Chris Carson. The problem they had early on in the season, and this is not a team with this prolific wide receiver core, out there. So
what about Josh Gordon, man?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but you got to get him. You got to get him going. Hey, listen, he could be a valuable piece down the line. We'll see. But I look at it and I go, okay. I watched the evolution of the team. When the team started, Chris Carson ran pretty well early on in the year, and they leaned on him, and it was him and Russell Wilson. Chris Carson started having trouble, and remember, Rashad Penny at that point, people were like, God, they got to get rid of this guy. That's how bad he was early in the year. Then there was a time here over the last maybe from week 5 to maybe week 10, where you were saying like one of the guys would play well, one wouldn't. Like all of a sudden Chris Carson would disappear on you, and Rashad Penny was having more breakaway plays, maybe not running 12 times a game for 65 yards, 70 yards. He was getting 58 yards on 3 carries because he'd have that one big play. And that was really tough for a quarterbacking and passing to rely on that running game. I look at this game, they ran for 218 yards. That is no joke in the NFL. That is hard to do.
Yeah.
And not only that, look at Rashad Penny. So you had Chris Carson have that great game. Rashad Penny went 15 for 74 and a score, which is awesome. Then on top of that, Rashad Penny gets four catches for 33 yards and a touchdown. That part of their game was clicking, and they're not going to go away from that. And you go back to the point of their defense isn't what it used to be.
Yeah, true.
So if they can control the clock and they can do that, and let's not forget, number one, they're 10-2. They just took over San Francisco, who is widely considered the best team when you look at
Everybody still looks at them as the Super Bowl contender.
And they've knocked them into a wild card spot.
Yep.
So you look at that and go, look, this is just the way the Seahawks have to win, but they're winning. And we're talking about a team that they're a playoff team.
I agree.
They're a playoff
I think
team.
they are. It just concerns me because I feel like the I'm not saying the train was we're on the bullet train here.
Yep.
As the year began. It just feels like the train has bogged down a little bit, and this isn't the right time to do it.
Fair enough.
That, just from the eye test of the past few weeks.
Well, they're gonna get some interesting. I'm trying to look at their schedule real quick. I know they end with the Niners, right? So
yeah, they have the Niners the last game of the year. So okay, so
the Rams.
I'll run down what we got here. The Vikings next week this week will travel back home, and they'll take on the Lions. And then they have
Green Bay on the
Chargers
road.
on the road.
Oh, the Chargers.
The Chargers on the road, Green Bay at home, Bears at home. Those are the last games of the year for the Vikings.
Okay.
For the Seahawks, they will travel south to take on the Rams this weekend, Sunday night. And then they travel across country to take on the Panthers, who we'll talk about them in a little bit. And then they go home and play at home the last 2 games of the year against the Cardinals, and then the last game against the 49ers at home.
Yeah, I mean, so those for them are good matchups to be coming down. I mean, realistically, we could be seeing San Francisco now. Their schedule is tougher the end of the year, but we could see these two teams literally playing that last game for
All the marbles.
for either maybe the 1 or 2 seed, but certainly a bye. So that's going to be real interesting. You want to count them out, and you can. I guess they don't win sexy. They're not winning. That's why people.
Right.
That's why they're ahead of the Niners, and yet people still look at the Niners as the class of the NFC. I think right now, even at a 5 seed, people still think that is because the Niners have won probably more demonstratively at this
Well,
point.
and I think if you're looking, to use the college football,
test.
not the eye test, but in terms of a quote unquote complete team. I mean, like where, like the 49ers offense isn't explosive, but they're solid. We know they're solid. And they run the ball too, and they're solid, but they also have a really good D. And so, we know the Seahawks D, we've said it. It's not the same.
Yep.
It's certainly not as good as the Niners. So
No.
that might be part of it too. Okay,
Sure.
Let's move on. The next game, which I was actually quite excited about, was the New England Patriots traveling down to Houston to NRG Stadium to take on the Texans.
Clemson West.
Yep. And the reason, I like the Texans, obviously, just because of all the Clemson guys. But I like this game because, I'll never forget Deshaun's first year in the league. And the first game he had the opportunity to play against Tom Brady and the Patriots, which was in New England. And they were trading score for score. New England won that game with Brady marching them down the field for a game-winning touchdown. And I never forget it because they showed Deshaun on the sideline, and he wasn't like, oh, or like perplexed, like, oh, he was just like, yep, that's the GOAT, man. But you could tell he was thrilled to be involved in that game against a guy like Brady. So, and I've said it a lot about Deshaun. Like, I love watching him when he's playing a team with another great quarterback. I know somewhere in him, it's not just, I want to do better than that guy because he's so good. And he's proven himself in this league, and I'm still a young guy. But it's also an appreciation for what that other guy is and has done. So it's just, I love seeing him in games like this.
Well, I think it's just, if you truly are an elite competitor, you want to play and beat the best.
Yep.
Team or player otherwise, it doesn't really matter. That is true competition. Like, if you want to walk your way through the playoffs and then play one tough team, then you're not going to be a winner.
Right.
You're just not. You're not. It's just not going to happen.
So New England rolling. They go into this game 10-1. Again, it was at Houston. Houston going into this game 7-4, just coming off a win last week against Indianapolis to vault themselves to the first seed in the AFC South. So, but it's only a game difference, so they really got to continue to hold serve to hold that ranking. In comes the Patriots with the the best defense in the league right now. You got the GOAT. He's been a little off. Look, you regress as you get older. Okay, maybe there's a little less off of it. And maybe he is on that decline, but he's still the GOAT. Okay, and so, anyways, it was important for Houston really to hold serve in this, and that's a tall order to ask. Brady, surprisingly, I think it might be one of his largest yardage games of the year. He went 24 for 47, 326 through the air, 3 TDs and a pick.
Yep.
So, it's not too bad, man. I got to be honest with you. If he's falling off, then I'll take that. If Eli Manning, who will be back out on the field, was still doing that.
Well, yeah, but I think the thing you got to take in some level of context is, remember, Brady has shown frustration prior to this week with particularly the passing attack, but overall the Patriots offense. The startling thing for me is 24 of 47, 50% passing. Now, this is the thing about Brady that everybody's known about him. Be where I need you to be, and I'll get you the ball.
This is hard for him right now.
Well, I look at this cat, like, first of all, Edelman, the top receiver for them, Edelman, 12 targets, only 6 receptions.
What's
So
going on, dude?
that's not
I mean,
working.
he had 106 yards in a TD, but he could have done so much
R-
more.
right. That is a big thing. And now you're looking at your next best receiver is your running back.
Yeah, but he
James
had an
White.
unbelievable day all
He
around.
he did, but again, you're talking about checking down. The Patriots have to be able to hit all tiers of the field.
Well, I mean, but what happens here with Sony Michel, 10 for 45, no TDs. He's not done anything. The Patriots don't usually ever draft like a skill position, especially running back in the first round. 2 years ago, they drafted a kid at the end of the first round, and that told you something. They saw something in him, and they wanted to use him. He has games. He has in the past, but not so much this year. And I think, everybody's bitching about Brady. That run game needs to, and maybe it's the line, that run game needs to do something more to allow him to be more comfortable, because all the pressures, like the run game is doing nothing. James White went 14 for 79, no TDs on the ground. Also had 8 catches for 98 yards and 2 TDs through the air. The reality is, though, is Sony Michel is their running back. 10 for 45, no TDs. That's the same stat line he's had all year, and it's not giving him any help.
Well, and if you look at some of the past teams with their offense, they've had a running back. I look at LeGarrette Blount, whatever.
Maybe not great, but they were effective.
Him, and I look at even going back a little further with like Corey Dillon, a little bit of thump in their running game that maybe wasn't the most prolific thump you're ever going to see. Like, I look at this, and there's no thump in this rushing game. You're not getting it out of Michel.
yak.
You're not getting it out of
No
White.
not yards after catch. No
Right.
yards after contact. Yak.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a problem. But then I also look at this cast of receivers. Now, think about this. This is if you look at the Patriots to me are an upgraded version of the Niners from the 80s. This was a team. If you think about the Niners, what was great about the Bill Walsh and even somewhat into the George Seifert era with them was they could go out and find a retread, a guy that was kind of didn't quite get it done for some other team and pull them in and make them great. I mean, think about some of the receivers that and particularly they've done it with the receiver position and somewhat at the running back position. These guys that they've brought in that maybe, and we kind of probably thought Antonio Brown might be that guy, like that resurrection, like come play the Patriot way. Randy Moss is the biggest example they ever had. Corey Dillon was kind of like that. He was, after those great years he had in Cincinnati, kind of dying at the end of his career. LeGarrette Blount, obviously we know he's had all kinds of problems throughout his college and pro career. And they would bring him in and say, play the Patriot way and we'll do well. Now I look at this, and certainly I think the tight end has been a huge issue for them.
Yep.
I mean, we're
Not
really starting to
having Gronk.
feel that even having only Gronk for part of a season was incredibly important. And the guy always would show up in the playoffs, and that was a great part about him. Now you look at it, they've gone through like 4 different tight ends. They hope that Ben Watson would come back, but I mean, him, Jesus, and Santa Claus are all about in the same age. And they brought in a guy like Sanu, like thinking, okay, that's going to be the next guy that at least plays a role opposite that Edelman. And that has not happened. And I think what you're seeing, everybody wants to point to Brady because he's older and you're not seeing him drill it in there like you used to. I think it's a combination of all these things. And eventually, what happens when you don't hit on all those retreads that you get? Josh Gordon was one of those guys they had hoped would resurrect his career. And again, I think and part of the reason why they let go of Gordon was because I thought they would see Sanu step up, and I thought they also thought they'd get a little bit out of Harry. And they've gotten nothing. So, Philip Dorsett hasn't evolved. Myers has been solid but not spectacular. And I think some of that's starting to come to fruition is who is that guy you lean on? And I think the Gronkowski-Edelman combo was so deadly when it came down to crunch time, and now one of those two guys isn't there, and I just think it's important to realize that. And yet, here we are talking about this demise of this team that's friggin' 10-2.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the other
And
side.
the defense has also struggled a little too.
We've spent time on it, but I do want to talk about the Texans in this game because they end up pulling out the victory, going to 8-4 and dropping the Patriots, giving them their second loss, making them 10-2.
Yep.
Deshaun Watson, very efficient day, 18 of 25, 234 yards, 3 TDs through the air throwing.
Yeah. Had a little trickery.
Had a little trickeration as my man Nuke throws a ball to Deshaun.
I'm
for a
not sure
touchdown.
that was supposed to be a pass. It was more of like an option
An
play.
end of a round.
But Deshaun's so damn fast, he got ahead of his guy, pitching it to him.
Absolutely.
So it was a cool play.
Yeah, it was good. Now, they weren't able to run the ball effectively against this defense, and that surprises me a little because I think that the Patriots defense, as good as they are, their strength is on the back end. So if they, what I've seen to this point, if you're going to be able to get to them a little, get to that defense a little bit, it's with a solid run game. Now, Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson aren't, Zeke Elliott and Christian McCaffrey, but, Duke Johnson led the team in yardage with 9 carries for 36, no TDs. Carlos led it in touches with 10 touches, but only had 17 yards and no TDs. So that kind of surprises me. But look, Deshaun, he did his thing. He stepped up in a big game. Nuke had a modest game, but if you look down the reception list, the ball was spread around a bit.
Yep.
And from the other side of the ball, their defense had a pretty good game. That defense for Houston's been mired in injury and just lack of production, and they had a fairly decent game. I mean, they were able to knock them around a bit and get them off of their game. Again, final score, Texans 28, Patriots 22, and I'll jump into their schedules next week. The Patriots go home to take on the Mahomes.
The
and
Chefs.
the Kansas City Chiefs will travel up to New England for a 4:25 game Sunday. Then the Patriots travel to Cincy, come home to take on the Bills for their second matchup, will be big, and then they'll get the Dolphins at home for the last game of the year. As for the Texans, they will travel this week. I'm sorry, they will be at home again. They have the Broncos come to town this week, and that's at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Then they travel to the Titans, who, surprisingly, and they're going to play the Colts this weekend, the Titans, and the Titans can get themselves back in the race in that division. And then the Texans will travel to the Buccaneers, and then they will have the Titans at home for the last game of the season. So they again, the Titans have some opportunity in front of them, but Houston's doing their thing, man. I like to see it. Let's roll to the next game. What we got?
We got a big matchup. This actually could have whoever won this game would have taken control of the AFC West, and that's the Raiders and the Chiefs. I don't know that we need to spend a ton of time on this because, simply put, Chiefs dismantled the Raiders. The Raiders did not come to play in any sort of form. It was ugly, and it kept getting uglier and uglier and uglier. Josh Jacobs did rebound off a tougher game the week before, 17 for 104. Derek Carr was a disaster in this game. He did get yanked in the last game, but again, 20 for 30 for 222, had 1 touchdown, but also had 2 picks. They had 3 turnovers in the game, which was a problem. It was an ugly, ugly game for the Raiders. They couldn't get off the mat. Darren Waller got a little bit more involved, so from that end, that was good to see.
Yes.
And again, this is the crazy part, though. This Kansas City Chiefs team, the Mahomes factor in this
wasn't a factor.
No,
as much as you expect.
15 to 29, so barely over 50%, 175, and only 1 score. But what the hell? The running game shows up in this, and they get 3 touchdowns on the ground. Got 1 from McCoy. Mahomes got 1 of his own on a neat little run he had, and then you had Darwin Thompson. Now they do have a problem in their backfield. Damian and Darrell are
they re-signed Spencer Ware this week, which tells you that, Damian and Darren Williams or whatever are both not in good shape.
Well, I think is it Darren or Daryl? Darren. Anyway,
whatever.
Not Damian.
Yeah,
he's out for the year. It looks like.
Yep.
So I think Damian.
I don't know
likely.
that Ware will play a big role. He knows it, but we've heard a lot of talk from Andy Reid about LaShawn McCoy because of his age, making sure they kind of his usage is used properly so that he's not overworked because of his age. And Darwin Thompson is a rookie that they drafted that I think a lot of people expected to see more of, at least till this point. And this was the first game he actually was involved in, more so because of the injury. Now, going forward, what's that going to be? I'm not sure. But, from the Raiders side of the ball, they played, 3 weeks back. They beat Cincinnati at home in Oakland, 17-10. And they were in the hunt because the Chiefs were slipping, and they were in the hunt for, it was beyond a wild card. They could potentially challenge them. Mm-hmm. And let's not forget, the Chiefs and the Raiders played earlier in the year, and the Chiefs won that game, but they still do have another one coming up. Oh, no, this was the game. I'm thinking. This was the game. Brain fart. So this was an opportunity for the Raiders to, maybe get themselves.
If they would have won, they'd be in first place.
Since that game against the Bengals, when it was all of a sudden, it's like, wow, they have a legit shot. Phew.
Yep.
They go on the next week to get the crap kicked out of them by the lowly Jets. I know they've looked better, but it's still the Jets. If you're a contender, you better step up and not play the level of competition, especially this time of the year. And then they get blown out here, and it's just, and the car gets benched, and it's ugly, and it doesn't look good right now for them. It really doesn't look good right now for the Raiders. I don't know. They lose the game 40-9. Chiefs move to 8-4, and continue to separate that gap between them and the Raiders, who are now 6-6. The Raiders now have to. They go home this weekend. They get the Titans again. The Titans. Oh, I thought that was they have the Colts. That's coming. The Titans are in the hunt in their division. So, and they have a pretty good defense. Yep. And then the Raiders have to go play or get the Jaguars. Not so much. Then they have to go to the Chargers.
Their schedule's a little soft.
Yeah,
Chargers
and then they have to
Denver.
go to the Broncos. But look, man, what they look like, I don't know if they're going to be able to get it done at all, and it's not looking good for them. For the Chefs, well, we already said they're going to New England this weekend. And after that, they go home. They get the Broncos. Then they travel up to Chicago to take on your Bears. And then the last game of the year, they get the Chargers at home. So it's setting up nicely for them.
Yeah, here's the thing I'll say. I want to group these last two games, the Patriots, Texans, and the Chiefs. In particular, I'll leave the Raiders out because right now the problem with the Raiders is they are just playing bad football. The Patriots being 10-2, the Texans being a division leader at 8-4, coming off a win, and the Chiefs win. The one thing I will take from all three of those teams is the way they played this weekend, and two of those teams won, is not a recipe for any of them to win in the playoffs. And that is interesting to me as we kind of get down to this, because it is not always who played the best football for the 16 games. It's who's playing the best football going into the playoffs. And so that's where we get to the next game, because I think there's an interesting team in here.
The Titans and Colts do play.
Yeah, they do play.
What the hell did I miss? What?
Because you're a week ahead. Because you're skipping the...
Am I? What's the state? No, I'm not. The Titans go to the Raiders this weekend. Oh, that's last
week. Yeah. Yes. So the
Sorry.
next game we're going to look at...
Daddy didn't get a lot of sleep last night.
Right. So the Titans are taking on the Colts. And this was a big matchup because that's a pretty compact division between the top three, between the Texans, Titans, and Colts. So this is a game that was very important. And the Titans have really gotten no press all year long. Remember, they had Marcus Mariota on the last year of his deal. They had to make a decision. They weren't playing particularly well. And so then they bring in Tannehill. And I got to tell you,
Resurgence.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's gotten healthy. He's getting a little bit right here.
I got to be honest. I didn't think he was a great quarterback, but looking around the landscape of the
don't think he
NFL
was
when he
trash.
was in Miami, I never thought he was like that bad.
No.
He wasn't elite, but he's definitely above a game manager. The guy can sling it.
Yeah, and let's be honest, he was in Miami, and that has not proven to be a really healthy place to grow your career.
Yeah. So the Titans go into this game. What? They were 6-5. And the Colts were also 6-5.
Right, one game behind
it's in
the Texans.
Indianapolis, and the Titans brought it. They brought it on this game. Jacoby Brissett wasn't in particularly all that great. 25 of 40. I don't think the recipe to win is to have him throw the ball 40 times, but let's not forget their lead running back, Marlon Mack, was out with a fractured hand, so it's kind of this mishmash of Wilkins, Williams, Hines.
Williams really kind of led off the game and was incredibly ineffective.
Well, it's coming off 2 weeks of 100-yard game,
plus,
so they're like, but understand, Jonathan Williams has been in this league for a few years. What was expected when he came into the league was to be pretty decent. Where did he come from? I think Arkansas.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the past couple of weeks, he's been more of what they are thinking.
So, and I think the interesting thing here is, and I go back to last year, and I paid attention to this a little bit more for fantasy because I happened to pick him up, but it really got me watching him. Derrick Henry, he's a second half of the year guy, and the Titans defense has been pretty solid all year, a little bit underrated. Man, between Tannehill and that power running that guy has done, he cranks it up in the back half of the year. Last year, he was unbelievable. I remember he had it was a 200-yard game with 3 touchdowns.
Yep.
Henry goes 26 for 149 and a score. Tannehill, again, not being quite a game manager, but not asked to do a whole lot. He goes 17 to 22 for 182, gets 2 scores in this. They're spreading the ball around. Their receiving core is not a who's who. He didn't go to anybody more than 3. He didn't get any more than 3 receptions out of 1 receiver. Most targets he got out of anybody was 4. But it's just they've kind of figured out a formula. And I got to tell you, this is a formula that wins in the playoffs. And
a very stingy defense.
Yep.
They're a run-heavy team. They've got a pretty good offensive line, man.
Yep.
I mean, Taylor Wallen's pretty good left tackle.
Yep.
And they when they need to throw, they throw off of the run. They throw base. They run, and then they'll peel off and throw as need be. Yeah, you're right. It's a good recipe.
Yep. And I think about this. They did win the turnover battle, but still, Tannehill got sacked 6 times, so Indianapolis defense was after him. But I think, again, they go back to that ability to pound the ball is going to give teams fits, and they're pounding the ball against some heavy fronts. People are not afraid of Tannehill. He's played well.
Did he fumble the ball? I don't think he did. To get sacked 6 times in the NFL in one game and not have the ball get knocked loose.
No, Derrick Henry had both turnovers. He fumbled the ball on the ground and fumbled the ball through the air.
Because I got to tell you, as a New York Giant fan, even pre-Daniel Jones with Eli, but especially now with the young Rook, he fumbles a lot.
You get hit a lot, and you get a little jittery.
Again, to Tannehill's credit.
Yeah, and Tannehill's a big, strong kid, so it doesn't surprise me. But I think this Titans team, they're on the edge of the hunt. I got to be honest with you, I think you're going to see him in there.
I do too.
I think you're going to see him in there.
And we've talked a lot about how much we enjoy Frank Reich. I think he's a great coach. I think they're just and Marlon Mack has practiced all week, and they're expecting him to play this week. But for all intents and purposes, these two have switched trajectories, and the Colts, they just as much as good as Reich is, and Jacoby Brissett's done a fine job considering the circumstances this year, they just don't have enough. Yeah. They don't have enough pieces. They don't have maybe that one guy that you can blow it up. T.Y.'s out. They're with the calf. He hasn't been right. They're saying he says he and the coaching staff say they hope he gets back this year. I don't know if he will, and even if he does, it's probably going to be too late.
Yeah. Well, it's tough because you've got a Texans team that has one of the best gamers in the NFL and Deshaun Watson, and you've got a Titans team that's rolling the right way at the right time. So even though they're all sandwiched, those three teams between two games in the loss column and have a few games ahead to play, I believe the Colts and Chiefs have already played both of their games. But it's going to be tough for them to catch them. I agree with you, and especially given health and all those other issues you've got. So again, I think what I take out of this, and we'll kind of wrap up here, is just the Titans are a team that nobody's really had their eye on. That everybody better start getting their eye on them.
So Titans win the game on the road, 31-17. They go to 7-5. The Colts go to 6-6. So now it's the Texans, the Titans, the Colts, and upcoming for the Titans, we've got. Like I said before, they go to Oakland, take on the Raiders this weekend at 4:25 on Sunday. They come home, they get the Texans. They still have to play the Texans twice. Then they're at home again, and they have the Saints come to town, which isn't going to be easy. And then they travel to the Texans for the last game of the year. As for the Colts, they will travel to Tampa Bay this weekend, take on the Bucs, and then they're traveling again to take on the Saints the following weekend. They're at home against the Panthers, and then last game of the year, they're on the road against the Jaguars.
Interesting. Some good stuff there to play out that division. The last week of the season could be kind of interesting this year if some things play out. There's a few matchups that could look really good.
Yep. All right. So this is the game that we said was probably the best game of the day, and that was the San Francisco 49ers traveling across the coast to take on the Baltimore Ravens. 49ers go into this game at 10-1. Ravens go into this game at 9-2. And, we've seen some fabulous stuff from our man Lamar Jackson. And here's a game that a lot of people, some people are earmarking at as a potential rematch in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And, we know that the defense for San Francisco's been great, but just how phenomenal Baltimore's been, and it's really not through the air; it's running the ball. I think the line on this game was like 6.5, and I know San Francisco D's been good, but Baltimore's just been controlling people. So, I just thought they would do the same thing, but not so much. It was a good game, 7-7 in the first quarter. At halftime, it's 17-14 Baltimore. At the end of the third quarter, it's 17-17. And the game ends 20-17 Baltimore. Jimmy Garoppolo, modest day, 15-21, 165 yards and a TD, no picks. Lamar Jackson, let me get to his stats. Went 14-23, 105 yards, 1 TD, and no picks. Lamar also rushed the ball 16 times for 101 yard and a TD. So he's still doing his thing. From the rushing perspective, a little bit of a mishmash. Look, they run the ball really well in San Francisco, but you don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah.
Breida's been out. Coleman didn't have such a good day. He had 5 carries for 6 yards and was quickly ousted for Raheem Mostert coming back from being banged up, who goes 19 for $146 and a TD. Just crazy day for him. Look, Kittle only went 2 for 17, no TDs. Deebo Samuel saw the end zone again. He continues to be an explosive threat for San Francisco. But Baltimore did a pretty good job of, though I think their defense, if you compare the two defense, San Francisco defense better. Baltimore's definitely gotten better, but not the level there. They held them in check. But like I said, San Francisco's defense did a good job of holding them in check. If this were a rematch of the Super Bowl, I like that the final outcome was Baltimore 20, 17, San Francisco 17. It was a closer matchup. It wasn't like it was not a ton of points, but it's not like field goal game. It was a really competitive, compelling matchup. So if this ends up being a rematch, and if it's anything like this, it could go either way, and it'll be a good game.
Yeah, I think what I saw in this game that was kind of interesting is nobody stopped anybody from doing what they do completely, but because they're both good teams, they slowed down each other's strengths. But it was a heavyweight fight where they had traded blows. So look at it. Like Garoppolo, not a prolific quarterback, generally speaking. Statistically, he's had a few blow-up games, but he wasn't terrible. He was 15 to 21 for 165 and a score. So he kind of did his role. You had the rushing attack. Got off for San Francisco with one guy, but still they were shut down at points in the running game. But they didn't get held to nothing. Then you look at the Ravens and you go, man, you got Lamar Jackson. This is probably one of the best stat lines anybody's had against Lamar Jackson, but Lamar Jackson still ran the ball for 100 yards.
Yeah.
He still threw the ball and scored a touchdown, and he was efficient. Mark Ingram was solid, not spectacular. So again, I watched these two teams and it was a true title fight. It wasn't like it wasn't like Lamar Jackson just got shut down and it was a San Francisco game. This was a chess match more than anything.
It was good.
And it was really good because you saw kind of players rising at times, but it was that struggle, that classic struggle that you like to see that you don't get to see as much of, I think, in pro football anymore. It was just really good and nobody looked bad. This was a game where it was really just you were fighting for everything that you did and everything mattered, and that's why it was a lower scoring game where some people might have thought, maybe this gets a little crazy just because you got Baltimore's offense, but at the same time you go, I got San Francisco's defense.
Yep.
Look,
San Francisco defense have been very good. They're really strong up front, and they're especially on their front in the line. I think Richard Sherman in that secondary at the beginning of the year, maybe so. So I think they've proven over this stretch that they're pretty good. They may not be phenomenal, but they're pretty good.
Yep.
But I say all that to say is they had a good game plan defensively. You look at the statistics, and, well, he's always going to get his. Fred Warner, number 54, the linebacker for San Francisco, had 8 tackles and 3 assists. But the second leading tackler on the team was Sherman with 7 tackles. So they knew that, Baltimore runs the ball. So they brought, help up from the backside, in that secondary to, put more attention to stopping the run. And that shows right there with one of the corners being involved in 7 second leading tackler on the team. So good game plan from San Francisco, and I agree. It was a chess match. And,
look at San Francisco. San Francisco's not used to playing a defensive game where they can't sack the quarterback. So they had to rethink it. They only got 1 sack in this game.
Right.
So they had to rethink their way they were going to operate against this team. And I what it really showed me is these coaches were really ready for this game.
Yeah.
Really ready for I'm talking defensive coordinators, offensive coordinators. They were all ready for this game. And it was just kind of like one of those, like, something's got to give. And it did, and Baltimore won the game. I would say great advantage being at home in this game. Certainly San Francisco coming across the country. This game could go either way next time they play. I really do. This is a really cool matchup.
Yep. So let's move on to the next one, and that was it is a Turkey Day special. The Buffalo Bills traveled to Jerry World to take on the Cowboys. The Cowboys, as ugly as it's been, went into this game with still a shot at the NFC East with them and the Eagles. The Bills, rocking and rolling. They go into this game 8-3. Cowboys go into this game 5-6. It's in Jerry World. We talked about it. We watched this game together. Jerry Jones doesn't like to not show up and doesn't like to not win on
Thanksgiving in particular, but national television.
This is their day. Yep. It's at their home, and they have something to play for. And with all the whispers about Garrett and what could happen and what Jones has and has not said, it really was a place where the Cowboys needed to step up. Look, one of the big things that the Cowboys have been getting knocked for this year is they can win games against lesser opponents, but every team that's
any
a
team
decent
over they're 1 in
they can't win.
Right. I think are they
I don't know.
0-5. They might actually not have any wins.
No, I don't think they
against
do.
a team that's over 500 this
Well,
year.
here come the Bills at 8-3, and like the Bills. We've talked a lot about them, their defense, and it's still good. And I believe they will be that top 5 defense at the end of the year, statistically, that we've projected.
Yep.
But still, at home, Cowboys, Zeke, they're
Understand that you're talking about a 8-3 team coming in, going up against what were they? They were
5
and 6 coming in, right? No.
Yep.
5 and 6 or 6 and 5?
5 and 6.
No, 6 and 5. They were 6 and 5. 8-3 and 6 and 5. So, and you've got a Dallas Cowboy. Yes, I'm right, because they lost 2 games, and that's why they're 6 and 7 now. So Dallas came into this game a 6.5 point favorite to an 8-3 team. So there's been a lot of disrespect for what Buffalo has won to this point.
No, people don't understand.
And everybody felt like this was going to happen. And let's just say, let's get in the game. And so the first series of the game, and some of this has been like Dak has had to take over games, and Elliott has been there and then not there. And there's just, so this was a game ready-made to try to run the ball and just to start to, this is the number 1 offense in the NFL, statistically speaking. That's crazy. They're number 1 offense.
Look, when you see Zeke make a play or a run and he gets up and he does the feed me, it's on.
Yeah, so
it's on.
And
I have him in fantasy.
He'll
do well if he doesn't do it, but if he's doing that, those are the days that he is mentally and
he's
ready.
He's in it.
And what did they do? What happened, dude?
Went right down the field, took a drive. Ezekiel Elliott was the focal point, and then he did
get up.
He did the feed me, and he scored the touchdown. And so all things looked good for them. That was a great start. Buffalo looked a little bit shell-shocked defensively, and this is a very, very good Buffalo defense. And then, man, what happened?
Well, all hell breaks loose because for some reason, they go into halftime. Dallas scores in the first quarter. Zeke scored 7-0. Buffalo had nothing in the first quarter. Second quarter, Buffalo scores. I think it was 7-7, and started to mount a comeback and Zeke was heavily involved until you start to get towards the end of the second, and slowly,
the end of the half.
He's slowly being less involved than he has early on. Okay, they go into halftime. Buffalo ends up scoring more, and they're up 13-7. So they come out of the half. 13-7. They're not down by scores upon scores. That shouldn't take them Dallas completely out of their element, meaning they just got to chuck the ball. But that's what they did. And I think Zeke saw maybe 4 touches the rest of the game.
He was 12 carries, period, is bad. But you would say, okay, 12 carries, he's probably got 36 yards because they're getting stuffed. No, he had 71 yards.
I don't know what they're doing. Buffalo proceeds to go on and just pretty much maul them. They didn't look good at all. The defense started to pick it up. Buffalo scores 10 in the third. Dallas doesn't score any.
In fairness, Elliott did fumble the ball twice in this game, too.
Right.
Those are two big things.
Look, man, I don't care. You can't take him completely
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that he did, when he fumbled, that's what helped kind of get that score up. But understand, he still ran 12 times for 71 yards, had 7 catches for 66 yards. He was moving the ball.
Yep.
He was moving the ball.
I tell you, it's it's in my mind, and yes, the defense was great for Buffalo, especially in the second half. But it was all Josh Allen, and it's not. He's more than a game manager, and he didn't have unbelievable statistics. He was 19-24, 231, 1 TD, no picks.
I think he's pretty solid. These are pretty good numbers.
Ran the ball 10 times for 43 yards because he can do that. Scored a TD. Just executed a great game, Josh Allen, and it was great. Look, final score. Buffalo wins this game 26-15. Buffalo goes to 9-3. Dallas goes to 6-6. And just to run down what's ahead, Buffalo does have to take on the Ravens. It's in Buffalo this weekend. Then they go play the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Then they go to play the Patriots in New England. Then they get the Jets at home. On the flip side, well, we just saw what happened in Dallas, and we'll talk about that in the next segment, as they lost last night, Thursday Night Football, to the Bears on the road. But then next week, Dallas will get to go home. They get the Rams. They go on the road to the Eagles. They get the Redskins at the end of the year. I think what I like best about this is at the end of the game, because it was Thanksgiving, they had said that they had made a little commentary that Josh Allen growing up said like one of his dreams was to be able to play in an NFL game on Thanksgiving
yeah.
and be able to have the turkey leg at the end of the game, like because they eat the turkey legs, and that's usually the MVP of the game, which they only do these MVPs like for those Thanksgiving
games. Yep.
And he got it, and he had like all smiles, and he's not like flashy, he's not flamboyant. I just like Josh Allen. He is not Deshaun or Mahomes, but he is definitely part of that next crop of solid quarterbacks that we're going to see for a while to do stuff.
Yeah, the more powerful they get in the running game for Josh Allen and maintain that good defense, the better he's going to be in a situation.
Yep. So that's it. That's going to wrap it up. We're just over an hour. We will dice this up, and then we'll get back on with some more NFL stuff, including the segment that's sweeping the nation, the good, the bad, and the ugly. As always, we'll see you
On the gridiron.
have a fantastic day.